I'm going to talk about Stoker Con. My first trip was last weekend, and I want to give everybody a rundown on the event and let you know the good, the bad, the ugly, and whether or not you should buy your ticket. So stick around, and also you'll get to see a pile of books that I brought home because I have zero shelf control. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel for the first time if I've never seen you before. Not that I can see you now, but you know what I mean. I'm glad you're here. I'm John Hartness. I'm the founder and publisher of Falstaff Books. I'm a freelance editor, and I am the author of over 40 novel-length works, including The Black Knight Chronicles, Bubba the Monster Hunter, Quincy Harker Demon Hunter, and a great big stack of other stuff. And today I want to talk about Stoker Con. Stoker Con. This is the Stoker Con 2025 t-shirt. And we'll get into why I'm wearing the 2025 shirt a little later. But before I tell you about the biggest professional networking and professional development conference in horror literature, I got something pretty in the mail waiting for me when I came back that I want to show off. James Artemus Owen, has been one of my favorite writers and artists for literally decades. I started reading Starchild way back in the day, and when he came out with this Illustrations and Imaginations, kind of a meditation on 35 years of illustration, comics, and pop culture. Basically, it's a big, badass art book of James's stuff. So when this kickstarted, I was all in from the jump. So it's a gorgeous hardback book with a beautiful foil embossed slipcase and tons of illustrations of James's stuff. If you haven't read his Starchild, you kind of owe it to yourself to do that, because it's spectacularly well written and beautifully drawn. You can see the art that this guy produces. It's just incredible, and he's one of the kindest, nicest people in the fantasy lit industry, and I love being able to support awesome people. And it came with two gorgeous, really nice quality color prints that'll be going up on my wall somewhere. And for now, this will all sit behind me so that you can enjoy it every time you watch one of my videos, at least until it falls over, because I'm sure y'all can tell me in the comments what you think the timestamp will be when that gets knocked over in this video, because I don't expect it to last the whole thing. But you clicked on this because I promised to tell you about Stoker Con. Last weekend in Pittsburgh was the 10th annual Stoker Con. Stoker Con is the professional networking and professional development conference that is produced by the Horror Writers Association every year. This is also where the Bram Stoker Awards are presented, and it kind of took the place of World Horror Con, which, strangely enough, I went to the final World Horror Con without having any idea it was going to be the last one. I was just getting started publishing people, and it was in Atlanta, so hey, let's go down and see what's going on. I did. I met some fantastic folks and had a good time. But I haven't been to a Stoker Con because it's been all over the US. It's not a conference that's locked into one destination. So most of them have been a little too far away, or they've conflicted with another con that's local to me. Mid-June, early June is tough because this month we're doing 3 in a row. We did Con Carolinas the very tail end of May, then we jumped right into Stoker Con. I was literally home for 2 days. I got home Sunday night from Con Carolinas. Yes, Con Carolinas takes place in Charlotte. Yes, I live 20 minutes away from the convention hotel. And yes, I stay at the hotel every single year. So I got home Sunday night, and my associate publisher, Teresa, and one of my authors, Drew Bailey, they showed up at my house at noon on Wednesday to drive to Pittsburgh. Yes, we drove to Stoker Con from Charlotte, largely because we were vending for the first time. No, not the first time. We had a booth last year in Stamford. I wasn't there. Teresa ran our table, and we had a much smaller presence. Teresa's been much more into horror historically than I have. And Rachel Brune has been to Stoker several times. She's the lead editor for Falstaff Dread, our horror imprint. So this was my first Stoker Con, and the first time we had 2 tables so that we could really see what the vending opportunities are. So I'm going to go over the convention and then my experiences, and then I'll show you the monster stack of books. There's over a dozen books on the table in front of me, all of which I brought home from Stoker Con. Now, Stoker is a professional development conference. It is not a fandom con like Con Carolinas, Liberty Con, FenCon, Arcon, Norwest Con. Those are more fan-focused conventions. Stoker Con is like World Fantasy and Worldcon, where you go to these events to learn from authors who are further along than you are in your career path, to network with authors, agents, editors, and maybe to meet some of your heroes. And I did a lot of those things. I met one of my very favorite authors and fanboyed over him quite a bit. If you've heard me talk about S.A. Cosby on this channel, you'll know that I'm a massive fan. He's one of my auto buys anytime something new comes out. I think he's the absolute best crime writer working in the industry today, and whoever's in second place isn't close. And I recently found out that he also writes horror. So he was at Stoker Con talking about his horror work. And I didn't recognize him when I saw him in the dealer room because I didn't know what the man looked like. I don't pay attention to author photos. And also, we don't always use current photos for our back flap dust jacket stuff. So I didn't know him. I found out he was there, and Elmarie Wood, who's the current president of HWA, is also an author that I publish and a friend of mine. So she volunteered to make the introduction. She did. He was very gracious. I fanboyed quite a bit. But that was really nice to meet someone whose work I have admired so much. I met a lot of other really cool people. I also renewed connections with some people throughout the horror industry that I have met previously and liked. So the networking at this convention was great for me. I talked to a couple of agents, one who is submitting some things that their authors write to Falstaff for publication, and one who's going to take a look at a project I have that I'm working on that I think might be good for a larger audience than I can create running a small press. And that's kind of what the convention is. It's a lot of people describe Scares That Care Author Con as a family reunion. This is not that. Yes, it's very collegial. Everyone is incredibly welcoming, super nice. I've very seldom felt an event was as non-cliquish as this was. Everyone was very open, at least to me. But this wasn't it's not a hangout con. It's not a talk about who's stronger, Hulk or Thor. Hulk, by the way. You're there to work, and you're there to learn, and you're there to make connections and sell some books. which we did. We sold pretty well. I was on 2 panels. One was on the everyman, every woman in horror, and one was a panel talking about what we're looking for when we're taking pitches at that con. Both were well attended. The pitch panel, oddly enough, was standing room only because lots of people were there to pitch and lots of people were interested in knowing what we specifically were looking at for. So that was jammed from the jump. But there were probably 35 or 40 people in the other panel, which was it was at 9 o'clock in the morning. So people are there to learn. People are there with their working caps on. I also did a reading at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, which had, I don't know, maybe a dozen people, including those of us reading, but it went well. Also, I found an author reading from a book that I'm very interested in publishing. We now have the manuscript, and we'll see. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know. But the bits that she read in the reading were awesome. So maybe we'll pick up a book. Maybe we'll pick up a few books. Teresa and I both took pitches. I think we had 12 or 15 people pitching to us, and we probably each asked for 5 or so submissions. When you're pitching at a conference or a convention, generally you have a 15-minute time slot. Yes, I'm holding up 10 fingers because I'm not limber enough to get my toes up here to get to 15. So you have 15 minutes, and they're very good at Stoker, very organized. You have 5 minutes for your pitch, 5 minutes to get to know one another, and then it's time to GTFO so that the person taking pitches has a minute to take a sip of a drink or finish off a snack or go pee, because we're sitting there for 2 hours. And most of the places where I've taken pitches don't give us that gap in between. So I thought that was really excellent. And the folks at Stoker were really good about, if we were running early, they check in with us. Are you ready for the next person, or do you need a minute? Usually I was, yeah, send them on. But a couple of times I was like, yeah, let me have a bite of my Builder bar. But the pitches were generally very polished. They were completed works. Thank you. And the people running the room were awesome. They had 3 people shuffling pitchers in and out, which was good because I think there were maybe a dozen of us or so listening to pitches. So it wasn't like we had one person doing the whole room. It was great. It was really well done. And that's a recurring theme. For a convention that's only been going for 10 years, this was very well run. Teresa and I remarked on the fact that this is not a con that we're helping run. This is not a con that we or I are a big deal at. So it was kind of weird to stand in line with everybody else to get our badges. Usually, if it's a fandom con, guests have a separate line. So the regular attendees get in their line, the guests get in their line, and our line's like half as long. At Stoker Con, everybody's in the same line, and it was long as hell. It was a long-ass line, but it moved. The registration people were on it. They were professional. They were organized. You walked up, told them your name. I didn't even have to pull out my phone to show them the ticket. Told them my name. They handed me my little badge wallet with my badge in it, handed me my goodie bag, and said, thank you very much. And then I said, I'm supposed to have a second ticket, and it's supposed to be for Teresa Glover. But I don't know if you've got that information. And she said, no, we have that you have a second ticket. We don't know who it's for. But here's the badge wallet, here's the other goodie bag, and I'm the only person that can give out these badge wallets, so if she's wearing this, she's good. And they were right. Teresa just put her business card in her badge wallet and had not a single problem at any point in the weekend getting in or out. So they really had their poop together, which is fantastic, especially when you've got 900 some people picking up badges, most of them on Friday or Thursday. Yeah, we were doing this Thursday. This was a long convention, though. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I would have been pretty happy if it was one day shorter. Not just because it would have saved us a day in the Airbnb, but also 4 days of a con is long. It's tiring. We're used to 3-day conventions. So by the time we were done on Saturday, my head was like, well, we get up tomorrow morning. Well, we're supposed to be driving home now because we've been here 3 days. No, we got another day. The panels, like I said, were great. There was a real variety to them, and they seemed to be very well attended. They do a thing that's a mass author signing. Yes, if you notice the wall changing colors, that's because Gandalf just walked in front of the light. Thanks, bud. Appreciate you. This was flippin' madness. There must have been 200 authors sitting at half of a 6-foot table slinging books. This was one of the least enjoyable parts of the event for me because everything was loud, everything was crowded. The tables were really close together, so if you had any kind of mobility device, forget it. But the tables were really close together. It was in the pre-function area outside of the ballroom, so the ceilings were low. And because I'm hard of hearing, anytime I'm in a loud environment, it's almost impossible for me to understand what's going on. So I didn't really love the mass signing. I would do it again because it was 2 hours long and I sold a couple $100 worth of books. Most of that was leeching off of the two guys beside me who were much more well known in the horror space than me. So I totally leeched off their fans and worked out fine. I also bought a book from Philip Fracassi, who was sitting next to me. He wrote a Civil War horror novel called Serafina that I bought for my brother. And I will absolutely read before my brother gets it. And I'm about a quarter of the way through, and it's really good so far. The signing could use some work. I talked to the organizers and said, hey, I really hope that you had somebody going around taking names for the no-shows, because there were a pile of people who didn't show up for this, and those people shouldn't be allowed to come to do the signing next year, and that'll cut down on some of your people. But that bit needs to be reworked a little. Accessibility was a little bit of a challenge the whole weekend, if I'm being honest, because the dealer room wasn't set up great for anyone with a mobility device as well. Now, unlike some cons that bounce from city to city each year, the thing that Stoker is doing that I think is very smart is they're in Pittsburgh for 2 years. So they'll be in the same hotel next year, and they've already seen a lot of the things that didn't work, so they can change them, which having that kind of institutional memory is really good for an event. And it'll be a lot of the same people running the event. These conventions that have different groups running it year after year after year, you never get any institutional memory. And that leads to things like someone going to a convention 3 times in a row and always having the same problem, because the person who ran it in Boston isn't the same person who's running it in Orlando, who isn't the same person who's running it in San Diego. So Stoker having the same group of people consistent year over year is going to allow them to correct these pretty minor quibbles that I've had. Minor for me because I don't use a mobility device. So I'm sure that they're going to work on that because, well, I talked to people who said, yeah, we know that was screwed up. So that was really the biggest wart on the weekend for us, for me. We had pretty good sales. We more than doubled our 2025 sales. We did a little over $1,600. And while that sounds great, this convention is expensive. It was 2 tables with 2 badges was $800. And at this and at most of these professional development conferences, everybody who's not a guest of honor buys their badge. So I had to buy a badge for me and for Teresa. And the reason we got 2 tables was it was the same money to buy 2 tables and 2 badges as it would have been to buy 1 table and 2 badges. So it would have been stupid to not take the second table. But that's $800. Then it was over $1,200 for our Airbnb. That would have been very different if the guy who owns the first Airbnb I had booked hadn't canceled on us 6 weeks out, because I had an Airbnb for $700 with 3 bedrooms and he canceled it and I had to find a new one with a lot less notice, and that ended up being $1,200. Still a dramatic savings over staying in the Westin, which was the host hotel. That was going to be a minimum of $200, $250 a night for 2 rooms, because my associate publisher is a woman, and a woman that I'm not married to. So I'm not sharing a room with her. So we would have been at least $2,000 for 2 hotel rooms for 4 nights. Then there was gas and a little bit of food. Having the Airbnb did keep our food costs down because we brought some food and ate dinner and breakfast at the house. But we were probably $2,500 in for the weekend on a $1,600 return. Now, most of the time, if I'm roughly $1,000 in the hole on a convention, I'm really upset and I'm talking about never going back. That's not the case here. Not only am I not that upset, I am very much planning to return to Stoker Con because I thought the show was great. We'll just have to figure out some other ways to cut costs. One of the things that was great about it was that networking. And the other thing that was less great was also something that was great. So this is the stack of books I brought home from Stoker Con. I almost never come home from conventions with more than 1 or 2 books. But I noticed that we were sitting next to my friend Leanna Renee Heber in the dealer room. And then I remembered I don't have a signed book of Leanna's on my brag shelf to brag about my cool friends. So I bought her new book, which she was nominated for a Stoker Award for. And it is America's Most Gothic Haunted History, Stranger Than Fiction. I also thought it sounded really interesting because it's a nonfiction book about creepy stuff. And I'm down for that. So that one I bought. I also bought a book of horror poetry by Linda Addison. She was one of the guests of honor, and she's a grand master of science fiction and horror and fantasy poetry. This was the book she won her first Stoker Award for, and I'm very much looking forward to reading it. And it was great meeting Linda for the first time as well. Jesse Scoble came by on Sunday and gave me a copy of his Weird Western comic. I'm a sucker for a Weird Western, so I'm down for that. What else did I buy? Oh, yeah. Mo Mashadi gave me a copy of her tarot-inspired short story collection. She gave me this on the last day. I think I'm the beneficiary of her not wanting to carry things back on a plane to England, and I will take that. Then every year they produce a Stoker Con anthology This was in our registration bag. So just for showing up, you get this chonker of an anthology with short stories and essays from the guests of honor, as well as from a lot of the attending professionals. And Danielle Ackley McPhail, who runs eSpec Books, is a friend of mine, and she edited the anthology the last 2 years, maybe more, I don't know, but definitely the last 2 years. So she was kind enough to give me a copy of last year's anthology as well, because it's good to know people. And then that, oh, and Serafina by Philip Fracassi, that is downstairs because I'm actively reading it. I mean, not actively at the moment because I'm talking to y'all, but that's the book I'm currently reading. Then I won a raffle. This is a heavy-ass raffle, but this is the newest title by Joe Hill, one of the tippy-top writers in horror today, and it comes with a nice signed bookplate, and all of the money I spent on the raffle tickets goes to the Stoker Con Diversity Fund, which I'm a big fan of. But you'll notice that there were a lot more books than that. This much of a lot, in fact. So in addition to the anthology, these two books were in my registration bag. And that's kind of the norm at one of these professional type conferences, conventions. Your goodie bag usually has a couple of free books that the publishers provide. Sometimes they're ARCs. This one's an ARC. Yep, these are both ARCs. So they're designed to drum up interest in the books. So let's try to do that a little bit. Our Cut of Salt by Dina Helm. In this lyrical debut, 3 generations of Palestinian women must put the haunting of their ancestral home to rest before the secrets of the past drown them all. Our Cut of Salt is a powerful and intimate look at what it means to make a home, to lose it, and to return, only to find it irrevocably changed. That sounds pretty interesting. All right. So that one was a freebie. And Something Followed Us Home, Tales of Latine Horror. I am not sure that I pronounced that correctly. Dive into the chilling depths of Latine horror with Something Followed Us Home, a groundbreaking anthology edited by Bram Stoker Award winner Cynthia Palaio, where each story reimagines immigration, colonization, faith, and folklore as the fears we inherit and carry across boundaries, borders, and generations. That's really interesting. And there are some people in here that I recognize and like. Particularly Daniel Jose Older has a story in here, and Dan is both a lovely person and a hell of a writer. But now we come to another one of my minor quibbles with the event. Freebie tables. There were a pile of other ARCs on the freebie tables. And there was a freebie table right outside the dealer room and one in the middle of the panel areas downstairs. And every day, the freebie tables got reloaded. So this is an ARC of The Night Pool, which is being released on August 25th, 2026. The Night Pool is a blood-soaked, page-turning horror set in the Gold Rush West, where 3 women must battle monsters both human and inhuman to survive. Perfect for fans of Alma Katsu's The Hunger and Victor Laval's The Lone Women. Sounds really interesting. I'm almost certainly going to read at least part of it. And an ARC of 9 Goblins. Now this one's already out, so this was a leftover ARC that the publisher sent. And this was published by Tor.com. Tor Nightfire, which is the horror imprint of Tor, was one of the major sponsors of the convention. But if you've got some of the best writers in the genre out on your freebie table, I'm a huge Sarah Gailey fan, have been for years, so I'm tickled that I was able to get a hold of this as well. But if you've got the ability to pick up a dozen or so free books off the freebie tables, why are you going to buy books? And a lot of people fly to this conference. So having so many freebies does cut into our potential revenue. That's something I've brought up with the organizers of the convention. I'm not slagging them here on YouTube for anything. This isn't me slagging anyone. This is me pointing out that if you're charging good money for your vendor tables, maybe don't let people fill up their luggage with free stuff. Now, these others, I don't know whether these were put out by the publisher or whether they were stuff that people owned and read and gave back. But since they're all Tor Nightfire, and Tor Nightfire is one of the major sponsors of the event, I'm betting that these were being given away for free. And this is another T. Kingfisher book, which I'm pretty happy to have because I have the first one. This is the sequel, one of the sequels to What Moves the Dead. And then 2 Chuck Tingle books. And Chuck Tingle is a goddamn national treasure, and I love having Chuck Tingle books on my shelf. But as someone who's there to sell books, I have implored the con to maybe scale back the number of books they're giving away because it's taken money out of my pocket. And I don't think that I'm losing money because Joe Hill is in the raffle or because T. Kingfisher's ARC is out in the lobby. I'm losing money because people can't afford to ship everything back. They can't fit it in their luggage. So it's something that I want people to consider when they're planning their conventions, is if you're having a freebie table, make sure that your freebies aren't competing with your vendors. But those are my very minor quibbles about the conference. It was a fantastic show. I didn't go to the awards banquet because I was hungry and there was free food back at our Airbnb as opposed to paying hotel prices for dinner. But everybody looked great in the pictures I saw, and the people that I saw before the awards as we were leaving for the day. Everybody seemed to have a fantastic time. Some great people won awards. Some great people were nominated but didn't win awards, and that's kind of how awards go. It was a great conference, and it was definitely one that I recommend for anyone who is serious about writing horror or dark fantasy. If you're not writing horror, though, probably not for you, because everything about the event is focused on professional horror writers. If you're an epic fantasy writer, probably want to skip this one. It's not cheap. And while there's certainly a pile of stuff you can learn, and the agents and publishers there, a lot of them were looking to represent or publish other things, it's still a horror-centric conference. The book I pitched to an agent while I was there is not a horror novel. But I also have 40-something books out, so I usually get a little leeway when I want to talk to people about doing stuff of mine. I've built up a little equity in the industry. I also got a chance to meet some viewers, which was awesome. Someone even stopped me as I was walking through the vendor hall and said, "Hey, this might be weird, but are you on YouTube?" I was like, "Yes, I am." And yes, it is weird. Not for you to stop me and say that, but weird for me to be recognized. I'm a writer. People usually don't know my face. But now I stick my face on your phone, tablet, computer, TV. I hope you don't have too big a TV because I have a huge head already. I can't imagine. I can't imagine how enormous my noggin looks on like a 70-inch flat screen. Yeesh, that's a little terrifying. Oh, but I promised to tell you why I'm wearing last year's shirt. And this is another minor quibble. They didn't have 3XL shirts. And while I am trying to lose weight, I haven't lost that X yet. So I'm wearing last year's shirt because the shirt I got this year is a 2X and I can't fit into it yet. It happens. Not a huge deal, but it means I can't wear my shirt. So I'll wear last year's shirt for a while more. Also, it's a really good shirt. So those are my impressions from my first Stoker Con. Let me know in the comments if you want to know about another convention that I may or may not have been to. I will try not to give you opinions on conventions I've never attended, because that would be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? So that's what I got. If you stuck around this long, you should probably hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want your name on the wall, like all these awesome people, after you subscribe, you can become a member. All of these things really help the channel. And as we're trying to grow and bring you more content, that's what we need to do it. So give us some interaction, folks. Come in the comments. Tell me I'm a moron. Come in the comments. Tell me I'm brilliant. I do read the vast majority of the comments. I don't reply to all of them because sometimes I answer it in a future video. But I do read them, and we do see what's going on. So thank you all for hanging out. And until next time, bye.